Welcome to the Money Made Human podcast. It celebrates at its heart the work of credit unions and their vital role in enriching our lives and communities. Brought to you by First Class Credit Union, each episode features insightful discussions revealing the meaningful impact that can be made through economic collaboration. Mostly, it's a collection of compassionate conversations about navigating life and the individual journeys we take. Welcome to Money Made Human, a podcast by First Class Credit Union. We're delighted today to be joined by Michael Devlin, the chair of the PFA Scotland. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much. I'm great, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
It's so nice to see you. We're really glad to have you here with us today. So you are the chair of the Professional Footballers Association in Scotland, and you were a footballer yourself. Mm-hmm. For how long? How long were you a footballer for?
Professionally since 16, so 16 years.
My goodness. So we'd love to talk to you about that. And also, you've just taken up a new role with PFA Scotland in terms of heading up all of their projects. Love to talk to you about that too. And also talk to you about your hopes for the future, if that all sounds okay with you.
Great.
So let's, if we can start with PFA Scotland and the chair role, why is that an important organisation for the football community in Scotland?
I think it's crucial really to our footballers and our members. Apart from anything else, we have to try and remember that as a union we are there to represent the employee rights of the footballers, and footballers are employees like anybody else in society and in the world, and they deserve to be treated fairly, have their contracts protected and have their rights protected. So I think as an organisation we are there, we're the voice, we're the representatives, and we really feel that we're the only organisation that properly have footballers' best interests at heart. Mm-hmm. So at times, unfortunately, we still have to step in at times, and we still have to offer that help and support, often in the way illegal, but as an organisation we do everything that we can to try and benefit our members in every way possible. So there's an array of additional support in the way of mental health. We have a partner that can offer support to our players if they're struggling with anything, whether that's a mental health condition, gambling, addiction, whatever it may be. We offer education and courses and personal development, along with, there's so many other things that go along with that, but we try and ultimately drive the standards and make the environment a lot better for our footballers and our members.
And you know, can we just touch on the importance of football first of all in society? Because I can't imagine the UK without football. It plays such an important part in all of our lives. Do you guys feel that in terms of working around it every day?
I think, having played football myself, you understand as you get a little bit older and you have a little bit more experience. Probably when you're younger, it's your dream to try and play football, yep, like so many other boys and girls when you're a kid. But as you get older and you start to understand the kind of wider impact that it can have in society and in the country, I mean, it's a fundamental part of our culture here in Scotland is football. So
of course,
I think with that then comes a bit of responsibility, whether we like it or not, to be an example and understand the role that we can play within that and how we can impact people on a much wider scale than just entertain them on a Saturday.
Of course. And you serve as chair. If you don't mind me saying, you're quite young to a chair role. How long have you been acting in that role, and why was it something you were interested in?
I first got asked to be part of the management committee, which is our kind of board at PFA Scotland, when I was about 22 or 23, and it kind of progressed from there. I'd been a member of the union since I was more or less 16 when I first went professional, or signed my first professional contract, and it kind of progressed from there, Gayle, where I started to understand the importance and the value that the PFA Scotland held, and how pivotal they were going to be in trying to improve things for football. And I come from a family that are very much trade unionists. Even my grandparents as well. My granny was a proper trade unionist, and from that side of things, I think it was reinforced at home
Mhm.
how important that was, and it very quickly I understood and could see the work and how committed the staff were at PFA Scotland. And I probably struggle with injustice, and I struggle with things that aren't fair. And certainly in football, that can happen quite a lot, where players are put in positions that are really unfair and not treated well. And I've seen time and time again examples of how the PFA would step in and advocate for the players and really fight for their rights. And that resonated with me. And I wanted to take more of a kind of proactive role within that. And the opportunity came up at first to be the vice chair to Liam Craig, who was chair before me. And when he retired, then Fraser had spoken to me and said, "Look, we'd like you to, stand for chair at this point," which was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. So when I was maybe 27, 28. And again, you always kind of have that feeling of, am I ready for this? And do I have the attributes and the traits and the characteristics to carry out that role in the way that you feel it needs to be? But Fraser was and still is incredibly supportive, and fully believed in what I could offer that role, and it's kind of progressed from there. So it's something that probably has evolved for me, and what I look at and how I try and carry that role out over time with more experience. But it's something that I really care about and that I'm really passionate about.
And Fraser that you referred to, that's Fraser Wishart. He's the CEO at PFA Scotland. We
Yeah.
got to speak to him a few weeks ago. It's so funny because he talked about the same kind of model of growing up where his parents really cared about social justice and got him involved from an early age. Is that something that's inspired you in your journey to be chair of PFA Scotland, what you've learned from your parents and grandparents before you?
I think so. Yeah, come from a working class background where we were very fortunate. It was a very stable and loving upbringing and home that me. I've got an older brother and sister. My mum's a school teacher, and that was reinforced all the time in terms of work hard, equality. Everybody should be treated equally. Everybody should be given the same opportunity. Kind of quality of opportunity,
Mhm.
quality of outcome. For both men and women. And my sister in particular is a huge inspiration to me. And she's the most, by far and away, no offense to my brother, but she's the most incredible person, incredible woman that has such an impact on me and has shaped a lot of who I am now.
I love that. Why do you say that?
She's just a remarkable person. I think probably growing up in the west of Scotland, you have attitudes and you have beliefs and things are normalised a little bit. And Rachel always thought differently, always thought bigger. And I think certainly challenged a lot of those beliefs from a very young age. Maybe prejudices and biases that you have as a white person, as a straight man as well. I think
Mhm.
Rachel just really opened my eyes to thinking about things differently. She was a really high performance student, very academic. She's got a law degree, moved down to London. She's got a master's in human rights. Um, and she just went on to achieve so much, and as a woman is such an inspiration. And she's my go-to, she's my confidant, she's the person that I lean on for support, emotional support. And as I'm all my family in general, and we'll maybe touch on that throughout my footballing journey, but just as a person, she's incredible.
I love that so much. When you say that, she's been an inspiration to you, is that through her work? Is it through the way she is with you? And would she know you would say that about her?
I think so. I think I've tried I've told her on our wedding day, actually, but I think she knows the influence that she's had for sure.
Mhm.
And I think it's a combination of everything you've just mentioned there. I think when I see her journey and what she's been through and how she's went on to achieve, she just recently became a mum in the last 12 months as well. Um, to my little niece Esha. I think just what she's achieved, how she navigated that, how she's navigated her own challenges as a woman, and certainly how she treats me and how she offers a kind of balance, how she offers challenge to perspective, how she offers different perspective. And there's been so much learning and growth for me that's been triggered from conversations and um, learning from Rachel. So I think she's the first. If something happens in my life, she'll be my first she'll be my first phone call. She'll be the person I touch base with first. I might already have an idea of what I think about a scenario, but
Yep.
I think sometimes I can be blinded maybe just with certain things, and Rachel's the person that I would immediately go to. I would trust her implicitly with anything. And yeah, I think
That's wonderful.
yeah, she's an amazing person. I'm very fortunate to have someone like that.
And you've taken those qualities to use in your chair role with PFA Scotland. What else do you bring to that? What else do you hope that you bring to that role?
I think lived experience, most importantly. I think
Mhm.
having been through my own journey in playing football, where I've met many different challenges and required support in many different instances,
Mhm.
I think understanding where we need to improve, where we need to do a little bit of work to offer better for our players and for our members, having been through that journey myself, then I can hope that I can highlight that, and I can now moving into a kind of project role as well, but also holding the position as chair. It allows me to try and campaign for change, campaign for better,
Mhm.
improve things. And I think we're lucky in Scotland that for the most part, we try and do things right, but that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of areas that we can certainly improve.
For sure. And we're really lucky at First Class Credit Union. We get to be one of your business partners. And I wanted to touch on that and the importance of good financial security for footballers. There's been lots of programmes on TV this year about how footballers in the past may have been scammed or trapped into schemes that brought onto them tax avoidance, and it's a shame. Many of them have lost money through schemes like that. But we're a very safe place. We're a traditional save and borrow institution, and our money's protected with government up to a level of £120,000. But why is it important for you to partner with a credit union and a trustworthy organisation?
Well, it's important for so many reasons, Gail. First and foremost, I think the people you use as people are really important to us. I think understanding what we're about and us having an idea and a measure of who you are and where your priorities are and your morals and your principles. I think the human aspect of it's really important to us, and that, to my knowledge, was evident straight away as soon as we met with you as an organisation that okay, these are absolutely people first and foremost that we
Yeah.
would love to partner with. Secondly, where that goes for our members, as you said, footballers are vulnerable to being taken advantage of.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a whole host of other things I could delve into here about the way that footballers behave,
Mhm.
and at times, not all footballers, certainly not in Scotland, get access to a lot of money at a young age.
Mhm.
And I think to have partners like yourselves who can step in, can try and raise awareness, can try and educate,
Mhm.
guard against certain scams that people are trying to take advantage of,
Yeah.
but also just improve financial literacy in general, and start to educate the players and members about how they can treat money and how they can move forward. I think probably in Scotland as a culture, or certainly part of our culture, is we're shy in talking about money, and
Mhm.
sometimes we don't like talking about it. But I think being a partner with yourselves at First Class Credit Union, it starts to get the conversation going, and it starts to normalise talking about it,
Yep.
and being a little bit more open about how we can be proactive about protecting our money, and doing what we feel is, or what you guys feel is the most appropriate for footballers.
I think also there's a perception, Michael, that all footballers are super wealthy.
Mm.
You know, we look on TV at Manchester City or Liverpool, but not all footballers are super wealthy. And I think that's an understanding we've come into this with, to say even if you have modest earnings, you can still save a little. And we're there if you need to borrow a little too, but all ethically done.
Mm.
You know, would you agree with that? That there's maybe misconceptions about football and footballers in terms of money.
And entirely, and even for myself, for a brief story, the first professional contract I signed was in £75 a week.
Is that right?
And I made my debut. I played for the first team against Rangers at Ibrox when I was 17, and I was on the pitch earning at Ibrox in front of 50,000 against players who were earning a fortune at earning £75 a week. And I remember when I would see my friends from school. I left school at the end of fifth year, and I would see my friends, and they had this same idea of, well, Michael signed. He's
You're
a pro.
minted.
He must be doing really well. And a lot of them had part time jobs at that point. They'd moved into sixth year. They had part time jobs, and they were probably earning more than what I was earning.
Sure.
And I remember really struggling with that and being really embarrassed when they were saying, "What are you earning?" Like what? And I thought, I would never lie about it, but I just didn't disclose what I was earning, So this idea that certainly in Scotland there's a lot of money and the players are very wealthy at a very young age isn't always the case. And I think that it can be damaging for players, for players that ultimately do end up earning really good money. I think if they have a much better understanding of how they utilise that, how they move forward with it. And I think that's the brilliant thing about being business partners with yourself
and
is
do
that
it safely.
Exactly, and understand what that looks like. But I think you get that, and that's what I'm talking about, that understanding that's fundamental for us as a business partner is you understand the disparity of our members, and that some players might not be earning a lot, but they can still be really sensible and really smart with what they're doing.
And all are welcome, regardless of stature or earnings. We welcome all of them. Is there pressure for footballers to have a lifestyle, an expected lifestyle? Does that come with it?
I think so, yeah. And touching on your point, Gayle, about what you see in the telly and now social media plays such a prominent role in society. There's this, I think, inherent want or need to be able to try and match and live up to what the perception or the outside perception is of that, So whether that's your designer wash bags and rucksacks and clothes and all the rest of it, headphones,
trainers,
cars, everything. And we kind of briefly spoke about this, I think, when we were chatting last week, and it can be really harmful and really damaging, and you can put yourself in a position that might be really difficult to reverse from an early age, depending on how you go about doing that. And it comes from a demand they almost want to be accepted, or want to be acknowledged and recognised, which is probably a different conversation on what support we can try and offer there mentally to and psychologically to players. But it's so easy. It's happened to me. I've done it myself, where you get wrapped up in this idea of, well, I want to kind of almost show like
that you're successful.
I'm successful. Yeah. What does then there could be a conversation around, well, what defines success and what does that actually look like? But ultimately, footballers aren't like everybody else, whereby their career is short-lived.
It's short.
They have to maximise as much as possible what they earn, whatever that number is, whatever that earning is, maximise their earning capacity, and certainly maximise how they utilise that weight or that money that they've got for 10, 15 years if they're lucky.
And I suppose us helping them with good financial behaviours during that time might be helpful to get into a routine of saving, and if you're borrowing, doing it ethically and with a legitimate organisation. That all might be helpful to them as well.
Hugely helpful. And I think that these are like key fundamentals and learnings that if you can apply those principles, irrespective of whatever spectrum of salary you're earning, if you can apply them, they're equally applicable to somebody on the lower end of that as it is to somebody in the higher end. And I think that's the really refreshing part of working with you guys, is that you understand that and that you can try and help our members with that.
And listen, we're delighted to work with you. We're so proud to have that badge, and we look forward to serving your members in the future. We're going to come on, Michael, to talk about your role with PFA Scotland in a bit and some of the ideas that you're thinking about in terms of projects. But I wanted to go back, if that's okay, and talk about your own journey with football, because I think people would find that really interesting. So you were saying you played football for 16 years. Talk to me about that journey. How did you become a footballer? Was it something you always wanted to do?
Yeah, I think from an early age, it was always my passion. It was always the thing I loved doing, and I've been outside. I had an older brother, and as I said, my big brother Paul, and he played football, so I would play with his friends and go to the back garden and all that kind of thing. So I think my love of it just grew and developed from that. And fortunately, I kind of became part of the academy system from about age 8, and made my way through and was released a couple of times. I was released by Hearts and Celtic, and eventually at 16, after I was released by Celtic, I was told I wasn't going to be offered a full-time contract.
Was that traumatic? Did you think about giving up at that point?
Probably I never thought about giving up, but it was challenging, Gayle, and we'll maybe touch on this later on, but I think my feeling at that point is that there's a serious lack of support for kids at that point, going through that system, going through this academy system, that their hopes and dreams and everything that they identify with and how they perceive their own identity at that point is as a footballer, or as certainly a prospective footballer, in terms of that's what they're trying to go and do. And everybody engages with that, everybody fuels that or feeds that identity as well. If you look at it personally at school and your family life, people recognise you and look and say, oh, they're the footballer, especially if they're in this kind of academy system where you're affiliated with the professional teams. And when that's taken away from you, so much of who you are is kind of taken away from you as well. And I suffered with that. There's embarrassment that all of a sudden in your friendship groups and you're amongst your peers, you're now not a footballer, you're released, you're freed. And my worry or my concern is that you don't have the tools. Adults don't have the tools to deal with such disappointment and such heartbreak, never mind kids that are so vulnerable and so impressionable at that point that can really take them on a course that a fundamental and key part of their life that's so important to how they develop, that if that's taken away from them, they might not necessarily recover from that. And then we're touching on the kind of environment that they're in, their home life, what support they have at home. And this is where I'm able to look back and be so grateful for the parents that I had and the family that I had.
You've had.
Absolutely, yeah. And my parents probably continually believed in me and continued to want me to pursue my dream. From my mum's perspective, never at the cost of my education, which is great now. But
well done, Mum.
I know, absolutely, yeah. So it's certainly not came without its challenges when we're younger, and I think there's a lot of work we need to do on that and how we support our young people.
Of course now the boys and girls coming through, they're part of WhatsApp groups and social media groups where if they then leave that team, they're exiting that chat group too, and it's just there's more and more to kind of deal with.
Yeah, I just think it's got such a potential to have a negative impact and have negative consequences on the development phase that they're in at that moment in time. As I said, they're so susceptible to going down a path that is really challenging for them and can really hinder their development. And for me, not only society, but as football clubs, we have to take more responsibility. I feel there's an abdication of responsibility in how we try to develop these kids as people first and foremost. The ambition is to develop them as footballers, but we have to understand that we're trying to develop them as human beings firstly.
You're passionate about that. Let's come on and talk about that. But your journey. So your mum and dad, they wanted you to keep pressing on with your dreams. What happened next? Where did you find yourself?
So after I was released with Celtic, I was asked to go in and trial at Hamilton Accies, and I played a game. Fortunately, that went well, and they offered me a 2-year contract. And as much as I was devastated at being released and cried for a few days and was really heartbroken about that from Celtic, that opportunity came quite quick, and fortunately I was able to take it, and I kind of never looked back from there. And after a couple of years, being a kind of younger player, I'd made my debut early, but wasn't really ready to be a regular first team player. Unfortunately, throughout the course of the next couple of years, I managed to establish myself, and my career kind of started from that point. I had 7 years, I think, at Hamilton, 7 or 8 years. I eventually moved on to Aberdeen, which was a really exciting and brilliant move for me at that point in time. I'd suffered a couple of serious injuries by that point as well, where I'd missed 7 months with one ACL, ruptured my ACL, my left knee, when I was about 21, then done that again when I was 23.
Is that tough if you face an injury? Is that because you're not playing football? Is that tough mentally?
Yeah, probably at that point, because it was quite early in my career and it was the first serious one, I didn't fully comprehend or understand how tough it was. It was almost normalised that you get an injury, injuries happen in football and professional sport, and you go through the rehab process. So it becomes quite autonomous in that sense, where you don't think about it too much. Maybe you don't have the capacity to think about it too much. But that certainly reared its head for me. When I moved on to Aberdeen, things started really well, and I was playing regularly, ended up getting a Scotland call-up, made my debut for Scotland for the national team, which was incredible.
Which will be there forever.
For sure, and it's certainly the highlight as I reflect now in my career, now that I've stopped playing, it's certainly the highlight. And probably my proudest moment was being able to try and give back to my parents. I played a game at Hampden.
Is this a Scotland game?
This is a Scotland game. My debut was in Russia, so none of my family could travel to that, unfortunately. And then we played a game at Hampden, and all my family were there, and I could see them when we lined up to sing the national anthem. And I wouldn't say I was overly patriotic when I was a kid. But lining up to sing the national anthem was something that I'd watched players do for years and years and years, and now I was finally doing that, and I could see my parents in the crowd. Families kind of sat just to the right of the dugout at Hampden and in a certain area, and I could see them and I could see my parents during that moment, and I think that was probably the most precious moment to me throughout my career, is that I was able to give that back to them after everything that they've done for me to allow me and enable me to be in that position. Without them, I would never have been there. So
Was it emotional?
it was emotional. It was emotional
Yeah.
to kind of see my mum and dad, and probably I had to stop looking at them because I thought,
Sure.
because
Hold it together.
the camera kind of pans along, and I'm thinking it can't come to me, and I'm like bubbling because I've seen my mum. Like,
What about for them? Do you know what they were feeling at that moment? If they ever told you that?
yeah, I think they were happy and probably quite proud that their son was managing to achieve that. But I think they'd also known that to that point, and probably the hardest point in my career was going to come after that. But probably to that point, they knew there had been challenging to then kind of realise what you were doing, and it can come and go in football. Things
Sure.
It's very much just about the next game, about the next day, and. I had a coach that I'm really close with and that I still speak to for the national team, a guy called Stephen Reid, who's a kind of mentor for me now. He was assistant manager, and I remember him speaking to me and saying, "Look, take this in. Like, don't let this pass. Not only in the way you perform, but even mentally. Like, not many people get the opportunity to do this, and just let it sink in. Don't fall into the trap of just treating it as another game, and then there'll be another game after that, and another game, and you'll be back to your club and you'll be playing for Aberdeen, you know." So I tried to do that, but as I look back now, that's exactly what happened. Your mind, as soon as the game finishes, your mind goes on to the next thing. So
Although I have to say, the way you told that story there, I was there in that moment. I felt like I was looking at your parents there. I could sense, the pride that you had. What happened then? So you're in Aberdeen. You've been suffering from some injuries. What's the next step?
So following on from that was probably at that point things were going really well, and then that was just before COVID, and so COVID then hit, landed in the kind of March. I think everyone went into lockdown, and what kind of came for me after that was a lot of injuries. I picked up an injury when football started back. I missed about 3 months, 3 or 4 months with that. It was a muscle injury, and then as I got back training from that, I then sustained another injury, which was a tore a ligament in my ankle, and that led to 4 operations, about 18 months of going in and out of surgery and trying to get to the bottom of what was the issue. And I think during that time, certainly physically was a real challenge to try and continually come back and rehab and try and get back in the grass and train and play. But more so was psychologically and mentally. I found that really hard, and it probably took me about a year to understand what was going on. But I was certainly suffering with depression at that point. And I was really lucky that I had a club doctor up there and a physio that I was really close to, and they really supported me through that and helped me. And I started to take medication for my mental health, something I still take now. And
You're passionate about talking about mental health, aren't you?
yeah, really, I think we have to try and normalise it. There's still I think we've made great strides, not only in football but in society. But I think the stigma attached to talking about it still, and living with it, is still very much there and very present. So for me, the only way to try and normalise it is to talk about it, to help other people understand that they're not alone and that they're not the only people suffering and struggling with whatever maybe mental health condition or problem that they're trying to deal with. So for me, this was my lived experience. This was challenges that I faced and that still continue to face. So for me, it's important to talk about it. I try not to hide it, and I'm certainly not bothered by it.
And in terms of how you've been or were feeling or have been feeling, is that also to do with being a footballer and identity and tying those up together? Is there pressure on footballers to be a footballer, if that makes sense? And that's the whole world. And if that's not there, does that leave questions for you?
I think so. I think through my career, Gail, I really struggled with that kind of identity as figuring out who I was in a footballing sense as a person. In terms of my morals, my principles, I felt that I knew them from a young age.
They were robust.
They were pretty strong and unshakable, which was great. But I think as a footballer, I think my self-worth and my self-value was really tied to the perception of how successful I was being as a footballer. So at that moment in time, when you're talking about Aberdeen, a really big club in Scotland, and playing for Scotland itself, the national team, I felt really confident in myself, and I felt like I'd kind of arrived at a point that I'd maybe dreamed about when I was younger. And with that comes other people's perception of that too, and they kind of feed into that. So, silly things like everybody wants to talk, everybody wants to meet you for a coffee, everybody's want tickets, everybody wants a sign strip or whatever it may be, and subconsciously I think it's feeding this kind of identity a little bit that you're so attached to. But the flip side of that is when things aren't going so well, you maybe have an injury, you're not playing for Scotland, and you've kind of disappeared a little bit, nobody knows where you are, can be a real challenge, because you then feel the impact of that. So you feel the impact of having a lack of purpose. You're not as valuable to your teammates, in terms of being able to play and train and contribute to what that shared goal is, if you like, within the club. But then also, as it relates to other people, something I really struggled with was hearing that other people were asking my family, what's happening with Michael? Like, is he still injured? And he's injured all the time. And that kind of narrative and language used really started to penetrate me, where
did you feel like you were letting them down in a way?
A bit, yeah. I felt like I was starting to become a bit of disappointment.
Yeah.
Where on the flip side of that, 18 months before it, I was the opposite of disappointment. And that was the most important thing to me. It wasn't so much that I was living it, it was more that I knew my family were really proud of the fact that people would say, oh, Michael, I see Michael playing for Scotland. And then to not have that, or not be able to give them that, I found really tough. And the conversation started to weigh really heavy on me as well. People asking about my injuries and why I wasn't playing, and those turn into jokes. And I don't think they come from a bad place, but people then start to...
But that gets into the bloodstream, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It really, really impacted me on a kind of much deeper level. And I think that constant disappointment and setback as well really took a toll on my mental health. And as I said, like I would consider myself, Gayle, somebody that's quite emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent about myself. And I really struggled to understand what was going on. I knew there was a change, I knew there was a difference, and something had happened, but I didn't know what that was. And things like social withdrawal, isolating myself, really low mood and low motivation, really struggling to get out of bed in the morning, and just struggling with life. Life seemed hard at that point.
Did you feel like you were failing?
I was failing. That's to my mind, I was failing, because as a footballer, your job is you're paid to go into train every day, train with the team, and then play on a Saturday, and that's what's ingrained in, is that mentality of you get up, you be your best, you train, you work, and then you play. And I couldn't do that. So I felt like I was useless to a degree. And unfortunately, comments and things that are said to you reinforce that belief, and it starts to shift. You can be really mentally robust, but if you're continually hearing that and it's reinforced to you on a regular basis, you do start to question then, well, what am I worth to people? Because if I'm not giving people a sense of pride when they see my achievements, as that relates to maybe family and friends around about you, I know I'm not proud, or I'm not fulfilled just now, and having to get up every morning and go and sit in a physio bed and then go into the gym and rehab. And you bring, in terms of a footballing sense, you bring zero worth to your team on the pitch. So I think it really makes you question then who you are and what you're doing and where you're going. And I've really struggled with that.
Is there not a part in this story that's courageous though too, in terms of you sharing this? Because it can't just be you. All footballers go through that journey, and ultimately all footballers, their career will come to an end. So all of them must have to cope with the transition of playing football and potentially being injured. But the difference in your story is there's not courage there in talking about that was difficult to deal with.
I hope so. And I think so. I think I had a conversation with my brother recently, actually, where we were chatting about my circumstances just now, and still had a bit of an injury that's been ongoing and kind of contributed to my decision to retire. But he said something about my kind of resilience and my courage, that I've kept trying and navigated these things, and it got me really emotional. And probably just hearing that people see that, and that you do have that resilience within you. I probably know that because I've kept trying and kept going, but my hope is that when you highlight something like identity and the dangers of your sole identity being football, to me it diminishes your value as a person. Football's something that you do. It's
Yes.
not who you are.
Yes.
And that's the really fundamental part. And that would be my message to any footballer, any boy or girl that's pursuing that dream, is that it can absolutely be your dream and you can pursue it and give it your all. I've lived the experience of how good it can be, but I've also experienced the flip side of that and the damaging part of it being your sole identity. So my work now as I move in, hopefully, and not only talking about it, but moving to the union is how do we then add different strands to people's identity? How do we raise awareness that football isn't who you are? It's just, like I said, it's just something that you do, and football will come to an end. So you will have to confront the idea that this isn't going to be my identity.
Yes.
This isn't a job that you're going to be in for the next 30, 40 years until you retire from work altogether. So what else can we do is to try and flesh out that identity?
Before we talk about the projects that you hope to bring to life, just in terms of your mental health recovery, what kind of things helped you along the way? You know, you are obviously very resilient, and I think everyone listening to this will see the courage in talking about that journey. But what else has kind of got you through and enabled you to cope and get on your feet?
Firstly, my family, for
Mhm.
sure. I think I told you about a story with my mum last week when I was in chatting. I was down in Manchester. That just gives you an idea of the type of family that I've got. Living in Manchester, I wasn't in a good place at the time.
And
Um,
you're still playing football?
Still playing, yeah. I was playing for
Yeah.
Fleetwood at that
Yep.
time under Scott Brown was the manager, and I was injured and I was struggling a bit with how everything was, and I tried to protect my family as much as possible because I knew they would worry and I didn't want to put that on them. So I was kind of trying to internalize it all and I had a couple of people I would speak to, but for the most part, try to protect them from what I was going through or how I was struggling. And unfortunately, one of the times I was speaking to my mum on the phone, I kind of opened the door a little bit to it and said I was struggling.
Mhm.
And I was a bit low, and I could tell she was like
Concerned.
very concerned just about
Mhm.
where I was at. And my mum was working in a high school in Wishaw at the time. And the next day, so this was at night, whatever day of the week it was, and the next day I was in my apartment cooking some dinner, and I got a knock at the flat door about 6 o'clock or maybe later, 7 o'clock or something. And just as I said to you, the way that my apartment was, you couldn't get to the flat door; you had to go through 2 or 3 other doors. So it
And
was
through like a concierge and
it was very rare for somebody to just be at your flat door, like chapping it.
yep.
So I'm kind of thinking, who's this? So I look through the wee peephole and it's my mum just standing, like looking.
Brilliant.
So I open the door, she comes in, she just gives me a big cuddle, and she was like, I had to see you with my eyes, I had to see that you were okay.
What did that mean to you?
It meant everything. I mean, that's so symptomatic in my mum that
Mhm.
she would do something like that. She'd get in her
Mhm.
car straight for work at 3:30 and drove to Manchester
Mhm.
straight just to see me. So I was cooking dinner, so
I
she was
love
right,
that.
come in, have some dinner, stay. Like you're not, no. I just had to see you. She was there for 10 minutes and she left and drove home. Which I think I
Mhm.
joked like, no, I was just worried, so she came in to help me, and now I'm just
You're
stressing.
concerned
I'm
for her.
following her and find my iPhone to make sure she got home okay. But nothing would have been too much for my mum, and nothing was too much for my family.
And I wanted to ask, going back to when you were talking about you felt like you were maybe becoming a disappointment to them. Of course, the truth in that is you would never be.
Mm.
You know, they probably have immense admiration for you for the way you have navigated your career, for who you are, for all that you do. They see all of that. It's I'm not sure they're really bothered about football. You know,
No, no.
they care about you. But wouldn't you say that that's sometimes we take on the wrong narrative ourselves? You know, in thinking, oh, we're disappointing someone. Actually, they probably just it's about love.
No, entirely. And my parents don't care what I do. My family
Yeah.
don't care what I do. And
Yep.
really, anybody in your life that loves you and actually cares about you
Yep.
doesn't really care what you do. Um, and it probably took me a long time to realise
Mhm.
that whether I was playing football or whether I was doing any other job in the world, I was still their son. I was still a
Yep.
brother and a friend to a lot of people. And I think when you do well to remember that at times, that really all they care about is that you're okay.
Mhm.
And it's probably something that you're aware of, but until you pay attention to it and actually catch your thoughts in terms of going down a sort of kind of path or a bit of a rabbit hole with that idea in your head, it can be damaging.
Mhm.
But as I said, without that support from my family and that constant reminder and reinforcement of Michael, it's you that we love and you that we care about,
Yeah,
irrespective of what you do, we just want you to be happy and be okay.
yeah.
I think at that point you start to realise that really that's what's important.
And we likely have to give ourselves more credit for how hard we work every day to be good, to do good, to thrive, to survive. I think it's important. That's a thing that we talk about.
Mm.
We actually need to give ourselves more credit, and I think you're so courageous in talking about that and being honest about that journey that I think you'll inspire young footballers across the country in the role that you're just taking up. So you're going to take on a role of head of projects for
Mhm.
PFA Scotland, and I know young people's a big part of that. What else do you have in mind for your future role?
Well, as I said, I think there's a couple of issues I feel that we need to try and address. So I
Hmm.
think support for young players, we already try and support with a kind of in a mental health and well-being. We've got a brilliant member of staff, Diane Scott, who supports in that sense and comes from a counselling background. She's got a master, sorry, in counselling and psychotherapy, so very, very competent, but also has done some brilliant work in partnering with a mental health provider, a mental health support provider. But it's certainly something that I want to try and carry on in my role and look at what support clubs are offering. I've been doing a lot of work on gender based violence as
Hmm.
well and
Hmm.
kind of sexual misconduct within sport. Um, and really just trying to look and acknowledge it, how damaging um, language can be. Uh,
Hmm.
as I said, Gail, I think the first time we were chatting about this, I'm fresh out of a changing room environment. And I don't want to sit here and say that I've not said silly things and done stupid things when I was a kid and
Sure.
pretend that I'm whiter than white. But as I touched on earlier, part of the influence of my sister and
Yes.
having conversations and trying to kind of educate myself a little bit, I think you start to understand how damaging that can be and the role that men play in trying to make women feel safer in society. Um, and football, as I say, can be a brilliant vehicle for that. We, whether we like it or not, as footballers, we can have an influence on what's okay and what's not okay in society. And I think we need to try and change attitudes a little bit. So we're looking at workshops to develop to roll out to our members about looking at gender based violence and sexual misconduct. Not that it's a fundamental problem in football, but it's about trying to empower players to understand that you can challenge that. You can
Yeah.
change the way that people speak. You can change people's attitudes. Like
Don't be that guy.
absolutely, I like,
Yeah.
and I think that trying to understand that we probably a lot of footballers, and there's so many good people in football
Of course.
and so many good guys in football. But trying to understand that women don't know who's good and who's not,
Yes.
for example,
Yeah.
is a really key point, and I think something I'd say to you was, I went to a round table with one of my colleagues, Tony Higgins, who's our president. Tony's an amazing guy and has been so good to me. I went to a round table around this campaign of ending sexual misconduct in sport, and somebody at the table who supported survivors of um, sexual misconduct had said, we educate and we teach our young women how to stay safe.
Yes.
How about we start educating boys and not being predators effectively? And I
Yes.
think that really struck a chord with me. And I thought, well, yeah, do we ever talk? Did they ever say to me, rather than expecting a woman to cross a road or be on the phone or carry her
Hmm.
keys or not walk in a dark way or not well lit street, and all the things that my sister was probably told and my mum was told when she was a wee
Hmm.
girl and every other woman's told, how about we start talking to boys about the fact that they could cross the street and that the way that they conduct themselves can actually go a long way to making women feel more secure and more safe in society. And I believe in football that we have a platform and we have a responsibility to try and start to make that shift. And if we can educate and empower players in their own social settings with their own friends, then maybe women in general can start to feel a bit safer.
I think so, and I think because of the community that you work with, you are adored. You're such a popular group of people that hopefully others will listen to that.
Mhm.
I know our work group, our friendship group, we're all kind of fed up of being frightened of walking in the dark. You know, it's just something we've all grown up with, and I think we're all kind of frightened. We're fed up of being frightened. So I think any advocacy will help. Um, and it strikes me that you're going to bring values into your roles, your chair, your head of projects role. What would you say they are? What would you say your key values are? Social justice is obviously important to you.
Yeah, I think just fairness, justice,
Yeah.
equality. We represent the female players in Scotland as well. So,
Yes.
and that game, or the game for the women, is exponentially growing,
Yep.
and they absolutely deserve to have the same as what the male players do. So, I think equality, justice, and fairness, understanding and experience, but also just the kind of values that my mum and dad have instilled in me from a young age of working hard, treat people well, and ultimately care about the human first. We're all people and we all work together, so irrespective of who you are in some sort of societal hierarchy, like none of that really matters. Like everybody deserves
Be a
to be
good
treated the same.
be a
Yeah,
good
just
human.
be a good person, like, and I don't think you need to overly complicate anything other than that. I think you can be a good person, treat people well, and you'll be all right.
You've talked about your mum and dad throughout this conversation. Are they the people that have inspired you the most? Who else has been figures of inspiration to you? I love that you've kind of spoken about them. I think kind of gratitude for our parents is really important. Would they know that you would talk about them in this way?
I hope so. I hope so. I've certainly tried to thank them, and I'll never be able to repay my mum and dad for the opportunity that they gave myself, my brother, or my sister.
Yep.
They did everything they possibly could to enable us to go and achieve
To
what we wanted
thrive.
to. Absolutely. They created an environment and a home that gave us every opportunity to be who we wanted to be.
Yep.
I think modern day we probably there's a lot more education on, for example, childhood trauma, and it can be easy at times to point the finger at the environment they grew up in. But really, our parents were just trying their best with what they had.
Yes. And
So learning themselves, yeah, it's the first time they went through being parents. It was the first time they had children, and they were living at a very different time as well. So, in terms of your question, not to go off on a tangent, definitely my parents played a fundamental role in who I am now, and what I was able to achieve. And without them, it would have been impossible. I know that for sure. My brother, I've got a really close relationship with both my brother and my sister. My brother's an incredible person. I feel like I've not paid him enough attention. He's an incredible person as well, and very close to him. So my family have had a key role in my journey to date, and I'm sure they'll continue to. Along the way, I will say Fraser Wishart, our CEO,
Yes.
is very, very influential, and has had a huge impact on me, not only in my role, but as a person, because you asked me about values. Fraser is entirely a man of value and principle, and he wouldn't have held this position, and he wouldn't have played a part in the union the way he has without the values that he holds. And every day I get an opportunity to watch and observe and listen and try and learn from Fraser. And at the core of his heart and the core of him is a want for better. And that is exactly what he does every single day in campaigning for better for the players. And without those values, that I think when he came on the podcast, he spoke about the influence his family played in his upbringing and his environment. And a lot of that resonates with me as well. And I think that to have somebody like that to learn from, his morals and his principles has been really, really, really special for me.
No, we certainly picked up he was a great human too when we spoke to him. Michael, what's your hopes for the future, for your role and for you personally?
I think personally it's going to sound cheesy. Personally, I would just like to I want to be happy, fulfilled, and content, and whatever that is. There's been challenges, but I'm starting this kind of new part of my life. It feels a little bit like this is the first part of the rest of my life after having walked away from football. So fulfillment and purpose is really important to me, as I'm sure it is to everybody. But if I can feel that in the day to day, then I'll be really happy with where I'm at. And professionally, I hope to make a difference. I hope to try and be able to influence change for the better for all our members and for people in general, for all our players up and down the country. I've lived that life. I've had that experience, and I've walked in their shoes, and I know the areas that we need to try and improve. And uh, within that role, I want to do everything I possibly can to try and make things better.
And I think because you've walked in those shoes, that lived experience, you're going to do that. You're going to help them.
I hope so. I hope that the things that I've made mistakes in personally as well in my own journey, I've learned from and I understand, and I can understand why they've happened. But also whatever the challenges are that at times I've faced throughout my career, then if we can remove some of the barriers that are potentially in the way to bring in help and assistance and support in those areas, then I think working for PFA Scotland and where we align so perfectly as a person for me in an organisation is we have those shared values and those shared wants to make things better in those particular areas. And working under Fraser, I've got somebody that is absolutely supporting me and pursuing change.
2 final questions. For anyone listening, particularly anyone from the football community that might be struggling with their mental health just now, what advice would you give to them?
Seek help.
Talk to someone.
And talk to somebody. Talk. Now, sometimes that there's so much power in talking, but I also understand and empathise with how hard that can be. I didn't do it for a long time, and I couldn't make sense of what I was feeling. I couldn't understand the emotions I was feeling and where my head was at. So I understand the temptation not to talk and try and almost internalise it and move through it yourself. But really, we don't have the tools to do that. And it's only through talking about it and reaching out for help, whoever that person is. As a footballer and as a member of PFA Scotland, we have an incredible support service in Sporting Chance. And they are there to offer support 24/7 to anybody that's struggling. But whether it's through ourselves or anybody else, talk, reach out and get the help that you need, and get the support that you need. As long as you get the help and as long as you do that, we're all delighted. And that's ultimately what I would want, is for people to understand that there's help there and that they can...
There's a pathway.
And that the way they feel right now isn't permanent. It's temporary, a temporary pain that you don't have to live in, and it can get better, and it will get better.
So, Michael, before you go, we've got some questions from the team.
Okay.
So we've got them, they're all numbered 1 to 6. Give us a number. What would you go for? What was your number?
4 and 5. Actually, 4, 5 and 6 actually, but mostly 5.
Okay, we'll go for 5.
5.
I don't know what these questions are. These are just selected at random. Oh, I wasn't even aware you were doing this. How do your studies in psychology influence the way you understand your own journey as an athlete? Wowzers.
That's a huge question, an amazing question. I know I didn't really speak about that, but...
So you're studying psychology?
I'm doing a psychology degree just now, yeah. Open uni, so
A
I just
Bachelor
started...
of Science?
Yes, Bachelor of Science. So it's the degree psychology with counselling. I did a counselling qualification a couple of years ago. It was the first part of that, not to be a trained counsellor, but it was the first part, and I kind of really fell in love with that side of things. Probably as much based on my own journey, but in relation to that question, probably doing that qualification in counselling, I didn't realise how self-reflective it would be, and how much it would trigger a lot of reflection and discovery within myself. And I think that my hope moving into psychology, and it has, I started it in September, as you're learning about different aspects of psychology, you're constantly comparing it to yourself and you're kind of self-analysing and self-reflecting. And I think as you become more aware of different components of it, you certainly resonate a lot and you see a lot of similarities and understand. I think a want for me getting into this was based on my experience with the counselling, was whether it takes me in a psychology pathway to, excuse me, in terms of work or a career, at the very minimum I'll have a much better understanding of myself, and I think that can only benefit me moving forward. So I like trying to make progress. I like growing as a person and evolving as much as possible, and I think that studying psychology will certainly it has done that so far, and the counselling course did that, and I think it will continue to do that. It will challenge me and help me grow.
Brilliant. Let's go for another question. What one do you want? Do you want another?
Go for 4.
Number 4. Oh, this is a really good one. If you could invite 3 people over for dinner, dead or alive, who would it be and why? That's a really good one.
I'll tell you something fun. I got asked this question a couple of years ago.
Oh, did you? So you've got a prepared answer.
Well, I had to change it.
Okay.
So I used to really like Russell Brand.
Okay.
Right. Let's not judge me here for saying this. Right. This was before we found out what the allegations and stuff were.
So he's not coming to dinner.
He's getting tapped. He's not coming to dinner. But that was my answer. And then when it came out and all that stuff came, I thought, oh my God. Oh.
Is there someone from the footballing world you would love to have dinner with?
I mean, I genuinely loved Rio Ferdinand when I was growing up. He was like my idol. Now, I don't know if I would have him at the table. Maybe Carl Jung, psychologist, just because of what I'm doing now, would be a good one.
Yes, so one of the fathers of psychology.
Yes, I think that would be fascinating. Maybe like Che Guevara, something like that. Yeah, somebody that, like, a revolutionary and somebody that really like fought for change and better. I should.
It's a tough one.
Do you know how I'll say Dermot Kennedy? There you go.
What a combination that is.
A mad collection of 3 people. I love Dermot Kennedy, so I'll say Dermot Kennedy.
Okay. We've got 4 left. What do you want to go for?
Go for 6.
6. Well, this is good. This is a really great question, given everything we've spoke about. What's one thing in your weekly, daily routine that keeps you motivated, even on down days?
Probably music.
Music? Anything?
I love music. I listen to music all the time. Driving in the car, out walks. But I think it's very related to my mood.
Yep.
Like, I will listen to music that matches the type of mood that I'm in, which isn't always a good thing, to be fair, if you're feeling a bit sheepish or down. But I think music has got such a power over me personally, and I use it a lot for motivation. If I'm not feeling great, or even if I'm feeling great, I just feel you can listen to music that really matches your energy or lifts you in certain things. So I've got such a spectrum of things I listen to that's a bit crazy. But I think music's a really, really powerful tool for me personally.
I love that. Final 3.
Go for 3.
Number 3. Oh, this is a question you're going to love answering. Are players actively encouraged to have plans for education or a second career if they're unlucky to have a career-ending injury?
Through PFA Scotland, they are. Yeah, it's something we push massively. Chris Higgins in particular, our member of staff has been unbelievable with that. You know, when he first came into the role, that was his primary role. Now he kind of manages the team and does a little bit more. He's more of a senior role within PFA Scotland, but we constantly promote the idea of personal development, of thinking about what's going to come next, thinking about how you can do something alongside football, or at least start to think about what you're going to do. And Chris does an unbelievable job at making different options available to players. I mean, there's research now, Gayle, that shows that studying or doing something over and above football can aid performance. It can help you on the pitch as well, and kind of touches on some of the things I'd said about to have a distraction, something else to focus your energy, stimulate your brain, and learning can be so positive and so productive for you as a player. So we certainly do. I think the clubs need to do more. Personally, I think the clubs they won't want to, because they want the players to focus on playing football, which I get. But at any given time, football can stop.
And you guys run a career showcase, don't you, for young players that potentially anyone listening to their businesses could get involved in terms of recruitment and jobs and careers and all of that?
Yeah, we do. We do that for our out of contract players in the summer. We have a showcase that runs for a week. The players come if they don't have a team and they train in the morning. We bring in top coaches to take them through sessions. And in the afternoon, there'll be workshops and there'll be a careers day, and they'll get an opportunity to meet providers and different people from different backgrounds, but we're also looking at running something in February of 2026 actually, so next month, and we're going to try and get as many young players in the room as possible, talking about with providers, and Chris is in the process of trying to make sure everybody's going to be in attendance, but to show the opportunity that's there for either if a young player or any player is going to be out of contract in the summer, or if they're maybe dropping down to part-time football, which some of our members do, and a large number of our members are part-time, so they're working, normally during the day. So it's something that we put a huge focus on and a lot of attention towards.
It gives them options.
Absolutely.
Final 2 questions then. What do you want to go for, 1 or 2?
We'll go for 1.
Number 1. If you could implement one change in football culture tomorrow, what would it be? It's a big question.
Where do I start? God. I think that's probably, there needs to be an attitude shift across the board in so many areas, but I think it needs to start from the top. So my change would be at boardroom level, and an understanding that their players, who they deem as assets and numbers, are human beings first and foremost.
Perfect for us, Money Made Human. Love it. Final question. I hope this is a good one. Oh, it's a really nice one to end on. What's your favourite book or movie?
I read a book recently by a guy called Gayle Lloyd, that was kind of about psychology and things like that. I prefer more. I'm not a massive fiction person. I want it to be probably self-help books and things like that. I loved that book. That was really eye-opening and really informative, kind of about mental health and psychology and childhood and things like that. And as a film, I'll say a soppy answer. The Devlin family were obsessed with The Lion King. And we all had characters in it, right? So I was Simba, my dad used to hold me up. My dad's Mufasa, my mum's Sarabi, and my brother and sister.
You do know we're recording this?
No, it's fine. What's funny is my brother and sister, Paul is Timon, the meerkat, and Rachel's Pumbaa. So I'll not go into the reasons why she's Pumbaa, but we all have our characters.
You've
for
got
that.
your characters.
That's probably quite sentimental. And my brother and sister have both got two little babies now, so we're going through the process, introducing them to the Lion King and treating them like Simba and all the rest of it. So that's got a bit of sentiment to us.
And lovely to end on a story about your family. They've played such an important part in your story and throughout the podcast. Michael, it's been so good to speak to you. Before I let you go though, it's a World Cup year. Scotland are in the World Cup. We've got Brazil. What's your thoughts? Are we going to get out the group phase?
I hope so. I think it's been an incredible draw, and obviously the last time we were at World Cup we had Brazil as well, so it's quite nice how it's went full circle in that sense. But I think we've got a chance. The first game's against Haiti, and I'm sure they'll still be a good side. But if Scotland can get 3 points in the first game, then they give themselves a right good chance. So I'm sure, regardless what happens, it'll be an amazing occasion. It'll be an amazing time for the fans that travel across, and hopefully, I'm sure they will. They've been doing us proud recently, but I'm sure the boys and Steve will go and do a brilliant job and hopefully get out of the group. And
of course, we're a national organisation, so some of our members will be supporting England. I guess there'll be members out there hoping that Wales and Ireland get through as well. So we'll be supporting all the home nations. And hopefully Scotland will get through.
Fingers crossed. What do you think? Do you think they'll get through?
I hope so. Let's do it this year. It's time. It's time we move on from that first phase. Michael, such a pleasure to speak to you. Thanks so much for coming on Money Made Human. You're a superstar.
Thank you very much for having me. I loved it.
Thanks for listening to the Money Made Human podcast. We're grateful to spend time with you and hope you enjoyed it. If you want to join a credit union, choose us. With love, until the next time, First Class Credit Union.